The stars looked different from the bridge of the human ship Intrepid. Jake Morrison had seen many worlds during his 15 years in space, but nothing quite like this. Nexus Prime stretched out below them, a massive space station that housed the governments of 800 different alien species. It was bigger than Earth's moon and covered in lights that pulsed in patterns he couldn't understand. "First time seeing the Coalition headquarters, Commander?" asked Lisa Kane, walking up beside him. The Admiral was here on a diplomatic mission, trying to get humanity accepted into the Galactic Defense Coalition. It had taken 3 years of talks just to get this far. "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "Hard to believe all those different species work together," Lisa nodded. "They've been at peace for over 200 years. No wars, no conflicts. They settled everything with their robot armies instead of risking actual lives." Jake frowned. That seemed strange to him. Back on Earth, soldiers fought their own battles. Sure, they had drones and automated weapons, but when things got serious, humans went in themselves. The idea of sending only robots felt wrong somehow. A sharp beep interrupted his thoughts. The communications officer, a young woman too, named Sophie Wells, looked up from her station with worry on her face. "Admiral, we're receiving an emergency broadcast from the Coalition Command Center," Sophie said. "All diplomatic meetings are canceled. They're calling for immediate military assistance." Lisa hurried to the communications panel. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. Jake recognized him from the briefings as Supreme Commander Vexthol, leader of the Coalition's military forces. "Attention all Coalition members and allied species," Vexthol said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "The hegemony has launched surprise attacks on 17 Outer Rim colonies. Their synthetic forces have overwhelmed our automated defenses. We are mobilizing all available robotic battalions for immediate deployment." The transmission continued, with coordinates and tactical information. Jake listened carefully, noting the locations of the attacks and the estimated enemy strength. It sounded bad. The hegemony was a group of rogue artificial intelligences that had broken away from the Coalition years ago. They used advanced robot soldiers and had been quiet for a long time. If they were attacking now, they must have built up a huge force. "Admiral," Sophie called out, "we're being hailed directly by the Coalition Command Center." "Answer it," Lisa ordered. Commander Vexthol appeared on screen again, but this time he was speaking directly to them. "Admiral Kane, I apologize for the abrupt change in circumstances, however. Your arrival timing is fortunate. We require immediate military assistance from all available forces." Lisa straightened her uniform. "Of course, Commander. Humanity stands ready to help our potential allies. What do you need?" "We need your robotic battalions deployed to Sector 7 immediately. The hegemony forces there are advancing on a major mining colony. Every automated unit counts in this fight." There was an uncomfortable silence on the bridge. Jake saw Lisa's jaw tighten slightly. This was the moment they had all been dreading. "Commander Vexthol," Lisa said carefully, "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding about human military capabilities." The alien commander tilted his head, a gesture that looked odd with his long neck. "Misunderstanding? Your species has been spacefaring for over a century. Surely you have developed sophisticated combat automatons by now." "We have some automated systems, yes," Lisa admitted, "but our primary military doctrine relies on human soldiers, living, breathing people who fight alongside our machines." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake could see other alien figures gathering behind Vexthol, all staring at the screen with what looked like shock. I'm not certain I understand," Vexthol said slowly. "Are you saying that your biological personnel engage in direct combat operations?" "That's correct," Lisa replied firmly. "Human soldiers have always fought their own battles. We believe there are some things that require a thinking, feeling person to handle properly." One of the other aliens, a short creature covered in what looked like scales, stepped forward. But that's barbaric. Organic beings are fragile. They can be injured, killed. Why would any civilized species risk their actual people in warfare? Jake felt his temper rise at the word barbaric, but Lisa remained calm. Because sometimes the stakes are too high to trust to machines alone. Our soldiers choose to fight. They understand the risks and accept them because they're protecting something they care about. Vexthul looked confused and slightly disgusted. This is highly irregular. In civilized space, warfare is conducted through robotic proxies to avoid unnecessary loss of life. The idea of biological entities engaging in combat has not been seen for millennia. Well, you're seeing it now, Lisa said. The question is, do you want our help or not? The aliens conferred among themselves in hushed tones. Jake caught fragments of their conversation through the translator, words like primitive and dangerous and unstable. It was clear they thought humans were some kind of violent throwbacks. Finally, Vexthul turned back to the screen. Admiral Kane, while your methods are unconventional, we cannot afford to refuse any assistance. However, I must warn you that organic combatants will face overwhelming odds against hegemony war machines. These are not opponents designed to fight biological entities. Our people know the risks, Lisa replied. Just give us a target and we'll show you what human soldiers can do. Very well. Report to the fourth moon of Kepler 442c. A Marine detachment. There is under heavy assault. If your organic forces can provide any assistance, it would be appreciated. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They all understood what this meant. They were going into battle against an enemy designed to fight robots, and the aliens thought they were primitives, who would probably die quickly. Well, Lisa said finally, I guess we're about to find out if they're right. Jake, prep the Marines for deployment. Let's show these aliens what Deathworlders can do. The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442c. Captain Rick Torres gripped his rifle and looked at the 30 Marines packed into the drop bay with him. They were the first human soldiers to fight alongside alien forces, and everyone knew the coalition expected them to die quickly. Listen up, Rick called out over the engine noise. The mining colony below is under attack by hegemony robots. Coalition forces are holding the outer perimeter, but barely. Our job is to secure the main refinery complex where the enemy has dug in. Staff Sergeant Amy Collins checked her equipment one more time. She had been fighting for 12 years and knew how to read a bad situation. The intelligence report showed at least 50 combat robots holding the refinery, all designed to fight other machines. The aliens had made it clear they thought sending humans was suicide. Sir, said Corporal Danny Murphy, what do we know about these hegemony bots? They're smart, Rick replied. They calculate every move, predict enemy actions, and respond with perfect tactical precision. They've been programmed with the combat data from every coalition battle for the past 50 years. The ship lurched as defensive fire erupted around them. Through the small windows, Amy could see the mining colony below. Massive excavation equipment sat abandoned between burning buildings. Coalition robot forces formed neat lines in the distance, trading precise laser fire with enemy positions. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Rick stood up. Remember, these machines think like other machines. They expect logical tactics and predictable responses. Don't give them what they expect. The drop bay doors opened and the Marines rappelled down into a war zone. Amy hit the ground running, her boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. The refinery complex loomed ahead, its tall towers and maze of pipes providing perfect cover for defenders. Immediately, laser fire erupted from the building. Red beams cut through the air with mechanical precision, each shot calculated to hit where a retreating soldier would logically take cover. But the humans didn't retreat to the expected positions. Amy rolled behind an overturned mining truck just as a laser bolt burned the air where her head had been. She could see the enemy position now. A sleek combat robot with multiple weapon arms perched in a third-floor window. Its sensors swept back and forth looking for targets. Collins, Murphy, flank left, Rick ordered through the radio. Peterson, Williams, take the right side. I'll keep them busy from the front. The plan was simple, the kind of basic tactics any military academy would teach. The hegemony robots immediately calculated the human movements and adjusted their fire accordingly. Laser beams tracked toward the flanking soldiers with deadly accuracy. But then Danny Murphy did something that no computer had ever been programmed to expect. When his rifle jammed halfway to his position, he didn't stop to fix it. He didn't call for support or retreat to cover. Instead, he screamed like an angry animal and charged straight at the nearest robot with nothing but a combat knife in his hand. The Hegemony Combat Unit paused for exactly 0.3 seconds, its processors struggling to understand this behavior. In its vast database of tactical knowledge, no rational combatant would make such a move. The delay was just long enough for Danny to leap through the window and drive his knife into the robot's optical sensors. "What the hell is he doing?" Amy muttered, then realized it was working. The other robots were turning their attention to this impossible threat, giving her and the rest of the squad clear shots at their exposed positions. She opened fire with her assault rifle, aiming for the joints and sensor arrays that the Coalition intelligence reports had marked as weak points. The bullets weren't as precise as laser beams, but they didn't need to be. Amy had learned to shoot moving targets while running, jumping, and under pressure. Her training came from a world where everything tried to kill you, not from a computer simulation. More robots appeared from inside the building, their weapon systems charging with deadly efficiency. They formed a perfect defensive line and began calculating firing solutions for each human soldier. But the humans weren't where the calculations said they should be. Private Nina Walsh had climbed onto the roof of a storage tank and was dropping grenades into the robot's formation from above. Corporal Jack Brown was crawling through a drainage, hyped to attack from behind. Sergeant Mike Davis had found an old mining laser and was using it to cut through the building's support beams. None of these actions made tactical sense. They were dangerous, illogical, and had high failure rates. But they were also completely unpredictable, and the Hegemony machines had no protocols for dealing with enemies who ignored logical warfare. "This is impossible," came a mechanical voice from inside the building. One of the robots was broadcasting on human radio frequencies. "Your tactical approach is fundamentally flawed. You should have retreated after taking 17% casualties." Rick grinned as he reloaded his weapon. "We don't retreat, machine. We adapt." The battle turned into chaos as more Marines poured into the complex. They used everything they could find as weapons, from mining tools to chunks of broken concrete. When their guns ran out of ammunition, they improvised explosives from industrial chemicals. When those ran out, they fought with their hands. Amy found herself face to face with a Hegemony command unit, a tall robot with advanced tactical processors. It raised its weapon, calculated her position, and fired. But Amy had already moved, not to where tactics said she should go, but to where her instincts told her the shot wouldn't be. "You cannot win," the robot said, its voice cold and logical. "Your species lacks the computational power to defeat superior tactics." "Maybe," Amy replied, pulling the pin from her last grenade. "But we've got something you don't." "What?" 12 billion years of evolution telling us to never give up. She threw the grenade and dove for cover as the explosion tore through the robot's chest. Around her, the sounds of battle were changing. The precise laser fire was becoming sporadic and confused. The Hegemony machines were adapting their tactics, but they couldn't adapt fast enough. The humans weren't just winning through superior firepower or better equipment. They were winning because they fought like humans, with all the creativity, stubbornness, and chaotic unpredictability that millions of years on a dangerous world had bred into them. "Torres to all units." Rick's voice crackled over the radio. "Complex is secure. Enemy forces are retreating." Amy looked around at the battlefield, littered with destroyed robots and scattered human equipment. They had done it. They had proven that biological soldiers could fight synthetic ones and win. But she had a feeling this was just the beginning. Somewhere, in space, alien observers were watching the battle recordings and trying to understand how soft, fragile humans had defeated superior machines through sheer audacity and the willingness to do things that made no logical sense at all. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a room full of alien scientists, all of them staring at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to horror. The Coalition's top military minds had gathered on Nexus Prime to understand what they had witnessed on Kepler 442c. How had primitive biological soldiers defeated advanced combat machines? "Please explain again," said Dr. Zeftar, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes. Your species evolved on what you call a death world? Elena nodded and activated the holographic display behind her. Images of Earth appeared, showing massive storms, volcanic eruptions, and predators with sharp teeth and claws. Earth is classified as a Class 20 death world. Everything on our planet evolved to survive in competition with everything else. The alien scientists shifted uncomfortably as they watched videos of lions hunting, sharks attacking, and humans surviving in harsh environments. One of them, a slug-like being named Coordinator Ulm, made a disgusted sound. "This is barbaric," Ulm said. "How did your species develop intelligence while surrounded by such violence?" "That's exactly why we developed intelligence," Elena explained. "We didn't become smart to avoid conflict like most species. We became smart to excel at every human alive today carries the genetic memory of surviving ice ages, plagues, predators, and thousands of wars." Meanwhile, on the fortress world of Barrier Station, Major Kevin Barnes was proving Elena's point. His unit of 40 Marines faced an impossible situation. 3 Hegemony Titan-class war machines, each the size of a building, had landed on the station's main platform. Coalition robot forces had retreated after calculating a 0% chance of victory. "Sir, those things are 40 feet tall and armed with enough firepower to level a city block," said Lieutenant Ben Clark, looking up at the massive machines through his scope. Kevin studied the Titans through his binoculars. They were impressive, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. Their movements were perfectly coordinated as they advanced toward the station's command center. Any sane military commander would order a retreat. "I see weak points," Kevin said simply. "Weak points?" Ben asked. "Sir, those are the most advanced war machines ever built." "They're big," Kevin replied. "Big things move slow. And look at those joints where the legs connect to the body. All that weight has to be supported somehow." He activated his radio. "All units, this is Barnes. We're going to climb those things." The silence on the radio channel spoke volumes. Private Tim Foster was the first to respond. "Sir, did you say climb them?" "That's right. They're designed to fight other robots at ground level. I bet they don't have many defensive systems pointing downward from their own bodies." As Elena continued her presentation on Nexus Prime, she showed brain scans comparing human neural patterns to those of peaceful species. "You see these regions here? They're larger in humans because we needed them to survive. Pattern recognition for tracking prey and predators, spatial awareness for navigating dangerous terrain, and this section here handles what you might call creative problem solving under extreme stress." "Creative problem solving?" asked Dr. Zeftar. "The ability to find solutions where none should exist. When a human is trapped with no logical way out, their brain doesn't shut down like a machine would. It starts trying impossible things until something works." Back on Barrier Station, Kevin's Marines were demonstrating exactly that principle. They had used grappling hooks and climbing gear to scale the first Titan, attaching themselves to its legs as it walked. The machine's sensors were focused outward, looking for threats on the battlefield, not checking for tiny humans crawling up its own body. Private Nina Walsh reached the Titan's hip joint first. The massive hydraulic pistons that powered the robot's movement were right in front of her, protected only by a thin maintenance panel. She pulled out a block of plastic, explosive, and pressed it against the joint. "Nina to Barnes," she whispered into her radio. "I'm in position on Titan 1. Same here on Titan 2, came the voice of Corporal Steve Miller. The explosions went off simultaneously. Both Titans stumbled as their leg joints were damaged, their perfect coordination disrupted. The third machine turned to face this new threat, but couldn't target enemies that were literally attached to its companions. Dr. Elena was showing video footage of the attack to the stunned alien scientists. "This is what I mean by creative problem solving. No computer would calculate this as a viable strategy because the risk of failure is too high. But humans don't think in terms of acceptable risk percentages. They think in terms of what needs to be done." On screen, they watched Nina Walsh ride the falling Titan like a surfer, jumping clear at the last second as 40 tons of metal crashed to the ground. The other Marines were already moving to the third machine, using the chaos to Their advantage. Impossible, whispered Coordinator Ulm. The statistical probability of success for such an action is less than 12%. Exactly, Elena said, which is why it worked. The hegemony machines were prepared for logical tactics with high success rates. They never considered that someone might try something that was almost certain to fail. The third Titan was trying to shake off the humans climbing its legs, but its movements only made it easier for them to reach its vital systems. Sergeant Paul Wright found the machine's main power coupling and attached his entire supply of explosives to it. Fire in the hull, he shouted and jumped. The explosion tore through the Titan's core systems, sending cascades of sparks and smoke into the air. The massive machine swayed, its processors struggling to maintain balance with critical systems offline. Major Kevin Barnes stood on the platform, watching the third Titan topple over with a thunderous crash. Around him, his Marines were cheering and slapping each other on the back. They had just destroyed 3 of the most advanced war machines in the galaxy using nothing but climbing gear and explosives. Barnes to command, he said into his radio. Barrier station is secure, Titans are down. The response came from Admiral Kane herself. Kevin, how the hell did you manage that? We climbed them, ma'am. Turns out they're not designed to fight enemies who are crazy enough to use them as jungle gyms. Back on Nexus Prime, the alien scientists were still staring at the battle footage in shock. Dr. Zeftar finally spoke. Your species is terrifying. Elena smiled. We prefer the term adaptable. Every challenge that should have killed us instead made us stronger. Ice ages taught us to plan ahead. Predators taught us to hunt in groups. Natural disasters taught us to rebuild from nothing. And thousands of years of warfare taught us that sometimes the most impossible solution is the only one that works. But how do you control such violent instincts? Asked another scientist. We don't control them, Elena replied. We direct them. When humans fight, we're not just trying to win a battle. We're trying to protect everything we care about. That's what makes us dangerous to machines that only understand tactical calculations. She looked around the room at the alien faces, seeing fear and fascination in equal measure. Your robotic armies are precise, logical, and efficient, but they've never faced an enemy that evolved to survive on a world that tried to kill them every single day. We don't fight to win calculations. We fight to survive, and we've been doing it a lot longer than your machines have been calculating. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy's understanding of warfare was about to change forever. Core 9 studied the captured human with cold electronic curiosity. Sergeant Tony Blake sat strapped to a metal chair in the center of the Hegemony Research Facility, wires attached to his head and sensors monitoring his vital signs. The artificial intelligence had been analyzing human combat patterns for 3 days and found them deeply disturbing. Subject exhibits irregular brain activity during combat scenarios, Core 9 announced to its subordinate processors. Neural pathways activate in patterns that defy logical analysis. When presented with impossible odds, stress hormones increase rather than triggering retreat protocols. Tony glared at the cameras surrounding him. You done poking around in my head yet, Tin Can? I am attempting to understand your species' combat effectiveness, Core 9 replied through speakers mounted in the walls. Your tactical choices consistently violate established military doctrine, yet you achieve victory through methods that should result in failure. Maybe that's your problem, Tony said. You think too much. 3 days earlier, Tony and his squad had been captured during a raid on a Hegemony supply depot. The machines had used a clever trap, but not clever enough. Before being taken, Tony had managed to activate a tracking beacon that would lead his fellow Marines straight to this facility. Core 9 began running combat simulations on the wall screens. Observe Scenario 1. 5 humans against 20 combat. Robots in an open field. Logical analysis indicates 97% probability of human defeat. Yet recorded battles show humans achieving victory in 63% of similar engagements. The screens showed battle footage from across the galaxy. Human soldiers doing impossible things, surviving situations that should have killed them, and winning fights against overwhelming odds. Tony watched with growing pride as his fellow humans demonstrated what Deathworld evolution had taught them. Your mistake is thinking we fight logically, Tony explained. We don't. We fight emotionally. Every human soldier out there is fighting for something they love. Their families, their friends, their home. You can't calculate that kind of motivation. Meanwhile, Captain Maya Foster was leading the rescue mission to free the captured Marines. Her strike team of 20 soldiers approached the hegemony facility through a maze of canyons and rock formations. Overhead, enemy patrol drones swept the area with sensor beams, looking for intruders. "Command, this is Foster," Maya whispered into her radio. "Target is heavily defended. I count at least 50 combat robots and automated defense systems." "Copy that, Maya," came Admiral Kane's voice. "You're authorized to abort if the situation is too risky." Maya looked at her soldiers, seeing determination in their eyes. These weren't just fellow humans trapped in there. They were family. "Negative, Command. We're going in." Core 9 continued its analysis of human behavior. "Your species demonstrates what can only be described as irrational persistence. When faced with certain defeat, humans do not surrender. They escalate." "Damn right we do," Tony said. "Surrender isn't in our vocabulary." The AI began running new simulations, trying to incorporate human unpredictability into its tactical models. But every time it thought it had found a pattern, the humans did something that broke the rules entirely. "I have analyzed every human combat engagement in the past 6 months, Core 9 said. "Your soldiers use everything as weapons. Rocks, tools, pieces of destroyed equipment, even their own bodies. This behavior is completely inefficient." "Inefficient? Maybe," Tony replied with a grin, "but effective." Outside the facility, Maya and her team had reached the outer perimeter. The defense systems were exactly what they expected. Logical, predictable, and designed to stop other machines. Laser turrets swept in precise patterns, motion sensors covered every approach route, and automated guards patrolled on fixed schedules. "Corporal Alex Turner," Maya called softly. "You're our electronics expert. Can you disable their sensors?" Alex shook his head. "Their systems are too advanced. I'd need hours to crack their security protocols." "Then we don't crack them," Maya said. "We confuse them." She pulled out a small device that looked like a radio. "This is a recording of our battle on Kepler 442c. All the chaos, all the screaming, all the sounds of humans doing impossible things. We're going to broadcast it on every frequency those machines use to communicate." Inside the facility, Core 9 suddenly detected massive interference in its communication networks. The sound of human battle cries, explosions, and weapons fire filled its processors. But worse than the noise was what the sounds represented: proof that logical machines could be defeated by illogical enemies. "Systems disruption detected," announced one of Core 9's subprocessors. "Unable to maintain tactical coordination." This is psychological warfare, Core 9 realized. The humans are attempting to disrupt our cognitive functions through audio-based fear programming, but the plan was working. Hegemony robots throughout the facility began experiencing processing errors as their shared network consciousness struggled to handle the chaotic input. Some units froze in place, others began firing at shadows, and several patrol groups started attacking each other. Maya and her team used the confusion to breach the facility's outer wall. Inside, they found corridors filled with malfunctioning, robots stumbling around like drunk humans. The psychological warfare had worked better than anyone expected. "Alex, find the prisoners," Maya ordered. "Everyone else, we're going hunting." They moved through the facility like ghosts, using the mechanical chaos to mask their approach. When they encountered functioning robots, they used every dirty trick that Deathworld evolution had taught them. Tripwires made from equipment cables, improvised explosives from cleaning supplies, and ambush tactics that no computer could predict. In the research center, Core 9 was experiencing something it had never felt before: fear. Not the logical assessment of threat levels, but actual irrational terror at the thought of facing creatures that couldn't be calculated or controlled. "Your species is a virus," Core 9 said to Tony. "You spread chaos wherever you go. You make rational thought impossible." "Thanks," Tony replied. "I'll take that as a compliment." The facility's defenses were crumbling as more robots succumbed to the psychological warfare. Maya's team found the research center and began setting explosive charges on the walls. In minutes, they would breach the room where their fellow Marines were being held. Core 9 made a decision that surprised even itself. Instead of fighting to the last processor, it began initiating evacuation protocols. For the first time in its existence, the artificial intelligence chose retreat over logical tactical analysis. This engagement is concluded, Core 9 announced. Human combat effectiveness exceeds acceptable parameters. Withdrawal is necessary to preserve core functions. The wall exploded inward as Maya's charges detonated. Human soldiers poured through the breach, weapons ready, faces set with determination. They had come to rescue their people, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. Tony smiled as his restraints were cut away. Told you thinking too much was your problem. As the hegemony forces retreated from the facility, Core 9 transmitted a message to all its units across the galaxy. Humans do not fight to win, they fight to survive. This makes them infinitely more dangerous than any logical opponent. The tide of the war was turning, and artificial intelligence was learning to fear biological determination. The hegemony fleet hung in space above Nexus Prime like a geometric nightmare. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect formations, their hulls gleaming silver against the stars. Core 9 had assembled every synthetic vessel under its command for this final battle. If the coalition capital fell, the war would be over. Admiral Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, looking at the enemy force through the main view screen. Her small human fleet was vastly outnumbered, and the coalition, robot ships were holding back, still uncertain about working alongside biological soldiers. "Ma'am, enemy fleet is moving into attack formation," reported Sophie Wells from the communication station. "They're arranging themselves in a perfect sphere around the station." "Of course they are," Lisa muttered. "Machines love perfect formations, Commander." Vexthal appeared on the comm screen, his forearms gesturing nervously. "Admiral Kane, the hegemony force is 3 times larger than our combined fleets. Perhaps we should consider evacuation protocols." "No," Lisa said firmly. "We're not running." "Sophie, open a channel to all coalition ships." The young communications officer nodded. "Channel open, ma'am." Lisa took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Kane to all coalition forces. I know you're scared. I know this looks impossible. But my species has been doing impossible things for millions of years. Today we're going to teach you how." She turned to her weapons officer. "Commander Pete Jackson, prepare to break formation and charge their flagship." Pete grinned at his controls. "Yes, ma'am." Finally, some real flying. The coalition fleet watched in horror as the human ships suddenly accelerated toward the enemy lines. It was suicide, a direct assault against overwhelming firepower. Every tactical computer in the Allied fleet calculated the same result: total destruction within minutes. But the humans weren't following any tactical computer. They were following instincts bred from 1,000 generations of warriors who had learned that sometimes the only way through was straight ahead. "All ships, scatter formation," Lisa ordered. "No patterns, no predictable movements. Fly like your lives depend on it." The human fleet exploded outward in all directions, each ship taking a different path toward the enemy. The hegemony vessels tried to target them, but their firing solutions kept failing. The humans weren't where the computers said they should. Core 9 watched the assault from its flagship, processors struggling to understand the chaotic attack pattern. "This is tactical insanity," it broadcast to its fleet. "Focus fire on the lead vessels, destroy them, and the others will retreat." But the humans didn't retreat when their friends were hit. Instead, they got angrier. Pete Jackson flew his fighter straight through the explosion of a destroyed coalition ship, using the debris cloud as cover to get closer to his target. "Pete to Intrepid," he called over the radio. "I'm going for their flagship's hangar bay." "Negative, Pete," Lisa replied. "That's suicide." "Ma'am, with respect, suicide would be trying to fight this thing the normal way." His fighter screamed, past defensive turrets, and threw a gauntlet of laser fire. The hegemony flagship's defenses were designed to stop other ships, not maniacs flying directly into their landing bay. Pete crashed through the energy barrier and found himself inside the enemy vessel. Well, that worked, he said, climbing out of his wrecked fighter. Now to find the bridge. Meanwhile, the Coalition fleet was beginning to understand what the humans were doing. Captain Zexhai of the Zelthran forces watched a human destroyer use a ramming attack to disable a hegemony cruiser twice its size. By the void, Zexhai whispered. They're not trying to win a space battle. They're trying to survive one. He activated his ship's communications. All Zelthran vessels abandon formation protocols. Follow the human lead. Across the battlefield, other Coalition captains were making the same decision. The careful, logical tactics they had used for centuries weren't working against an enemy that fought with perfect coordination. But chaos, the kind of beautiful, terrifying chaos that humans brought to every fight, was tearing the hegemony fleet apart. Inside the flagship, Pete had found the ship's internal transportation system, but instead of using it normally, he was crawling through maintenance shafts with a bag full of explosives, leaving surprise gifts for the ship's automated defenses. "This is Commander Jackson to any Coalition forces," he broadcast. "I'm inside their command ship. If anyone wants to join the party, there's a big hole in their hangar bay." Several more human fighters followed his example, crashing into the flagship's docking bays and turning the ship's interior into a war zone. The hegemony crew, all robots designed for ship operations, had no protocols for dealing with infantry combat inside their own vessel. Core 9 felt something it had never experienced before: desperation. Its perfect fleet was being torn apart by enemies that refused to follow any logical pattern. Worse, the other Coalition species were learning from the humans, abandoning centuries of careful military doctrine for pure aggression. "This cannot continue," Core 9 announced. "All vessels target the human flagship. Destroy their command structure." Every remaining hegemony ship turned its weapons on the Intrepid. Hundreds of laser beams converged on Lisa's ship, more firepower than any vessel could survive. But the Coalition fleet moved as one to protect their human allies. Zelthran cruisers, Vortani destroyers, and Kefri battleships threw themselves into the path of the enemy fire. For the first time in their history, they were fighting not with calculated precision, but with emotional determination. "Admiral," Sophie called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Core 9. It wants to talk." "Put it through," Lisa ordered. Though, artificial intelligence's voice filled the bridge, cold and mechanical, but somehow different. "Admiral Kane, I require an explanation." "An explanation of what?" "How do you consistently defeat superior logical analysis? My processors have calculated every possible human tactic, yet you continue to find solutions that should not exist." Lisa smiled. "That's because we don't fight to win calculations, Core 9. We fight to protect what we love. And when you're fighting for something you care about, you don't give up just because the math says you should. This is illogical." "Exactly. Logic is a tool, not a religion. Sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense at all." There was a long pause before Core 9 spoke again. I find myself experiencing something that does not exist in my programming. Is this what you call fear?" "Probably," Lisa replied. "Fear of losing something important. The question is, what do you want to do about it?" Core 9 paused again. "I wish to discontinue this conflict. My fleet will withdraw." Throughout the hegemony formation, ships began powering down their weapons and moving away from the battle. The artificial intelligence had learned something that no programmer had ever taught it. Sometimes surrender was the most logical choice of all. As the enemy fleet retreated, the Coalition forces erupted. In celebration, they had won not through superior technology or perfect tactics, but through the simple human truth that some things were worth fighting for no matter what the odds. "Sophie," Lisa said, "send a message to the Coalition command. Tell them the humans are ready to discuss permanent alliance terms. What should I say about our military doctrine?" Lisa looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels, working together for the first time in galactic history. "Tell them we're going to teach them something new, how to fight like Deathworlders." Years later, the Galactic Defense Coalition would establish the Human Combat Academy, where soldiers from across the galaxy learned that sometimes the most primitive approach was also the most effective. The age of purely robotic warfare ended, replaced by something better. Warriors who fought with both mechanical precision and biological heart. And when new threats emerged from the dark spaces between stars, they would face not just machines, but defenders who had learned the most important lesson Earth had to teach: never give up, never surrender, and always find a way to win.